I'm Kimmy, also known as GoldenLassoGirl, and welcome to my workshop. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make real metal accessories for your cosplay and costumes. I'm going to be making a version of Wonder Woman's tiara today because it's something small and compact and something I can do very easily in front of the camera. But I've used the same technique to make larger pieces, such as my Wonder Woman chest piece, my bracers, and things for other costumes completely. You don't need any power tools for this tutorial, although a Dremel really does help. What you absolutely will need is a metal kick plate that you can pick up at any hardware store. Please make sure it's aluminum. If you pick a brass or steel one, you're going to be out of luck and this tutorial will not work for you. You will need some simple craft foam to draw your pattern. Aviation snips. Make sure they are at least 18 gauge so that you can cut through the metal. A good old-fashioned hammer and nail. And a sanding block. You can also use a Dremel in place of those items or with them. We're going to start off by drawing what we want our tiara to look like. So I've gotten started already here. I'm going to cut it out. You can use regular scissors, super fast to use an Exacto knife as well. And then to make sure that my pattern is absolutely symmetrical, notice I only did half of it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip it over and trace it, making sure I don't let the craft foam bend because then it'll get warped. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut out that other side too. And this is going to be my pattern for my tiara. Notice with my tiara, and you'll want to do this with belts too, it's not perfectly straight. When you're making a tiara, you want it to lay flat against your forehead. So you actually need a little bit of a curvature. If you notice, it's a little bit of a U shape to it to make it lay flat against your forehead, and that gives it that kind of shape. You're going to be using your kick plate. This is what they look like. You generally see them on the bottom of doors. This looks like it's brass, but it's actually made of aluminum. Again, that's super important to this tutorial. This one looks really scratched. There's actually a very thin plastic protective film on this that makes it so it doesn't get scratched. So I'm going to use this as the front, the piece of the plastic, and I'm going to leave the plastic on it as long as I can to protect it. So I'm actually going to flip it around this side, and this is going to be the back side of my tiara. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pattern, which I already made. I'm going to trace it on the back with my trusty Sharpie here. And it's not really like imperative to the project, but since I use metal a lot, I try and get pieces as close to the edge as I can. That way it leaves me with as much usable metal as I can for other projects later. There we go. So then I have my tiara all traced onto the kick plate. And now I'm going to use my Aviation Snips to cut it out. This can be a long process. I highly recommend that you use some gloves because aluminum gets really sharp when it's cut. If you're super duper with your Dremel, you can also use your Dremel to cut through and cut out your tiara. However, I tend to get more jagged edges that way, so I actually prefer to use the snips. So while I'm cutting the aluminum, you can notice it cuts pretty easily. I'm going to go very slowly though. And I'm not cutting all the way to the end of the snips because that will leave a little bit of kind of what looks like a hangnail in some ways. So I'm cutting part way down the blade, about halfway down the blades, and then I'm scooting it back up. As I'm cutting, I'm going to need to bend the aluminum so it gets out of the way. And just be very careful with that you're not bending parts of the aluminum that you will want to use later. What we want to do now is we're going to sand down the edges to make it smooth and less sharp, and so it won't actually cut into your forehead while you're wearing it. You can do that with a Dremel. And you can also do that with a block sander. You want to start with something with pretty high grit because it takes a while. It takes a while, doesn't it, Xandra? Even if you use a Dremel, sometimes there still can be some rough edges, so I definitely recommend finishing it off by hand. Now there are a few places on my tiara where you saw earlier, I accidentally went to the end of the blade, and it gives a little bit of a dimple. To fix that, go ahead and grab a piece of cloth, put it over that spot, and then use some needle nose pliers to very gently press in on it. And that will let you kind of flatten that dimple out just slightly. Again, you're probably not going to make it perfect after that, but it'll help it kind of go back in line, and it won't be quite so noticeable. All right, so that part of our tiara is done now. Since it's aluminum, it can be bent very easily. Literally put it on your forehead, and you bend it very slowly but surely. For larger pieces of armor, sometimes I'll put a towel over the back of a chair, a folding chair, and I'll use that to bend it. When I'm getting really dramatic curves, when I was doing my Wonder Woman bracers, that's what I did to get that perfect little curve. So there we go. It's starting to come together there. To hold on the tiara, we're gonna strip a piece of elastic between two holes in the back. So the next thing we need to do is create those holes. So now that we've made our holes and sanded them so that they're nice and smooth, they're not going to hurt us at all, we're going to go ahead and put some elastic in here so that it stays on our heads when we're at conventions. Go ahead and just lace it through the hole there and then tie a really good knot. We want it to be pretty tight, so you want to kind of pull it together. You'll measure it on your head and then you will tie it into place. And then you're going to trim it just a little bit. The next thing we're going to be doing is pulling off that thin layer of plastic. Nails really come in handy here. My hands look a mess, but you can see now. Pulling it off. And you can see how shiny and smooth it looks. That's the gold right there. That's why the money shot, that's why we leave that plastic covering on it as long as we can. It's hard to wait, I know, but it's worth it to protect it. So now we have our beautiful, shiny, actually metal tiara that we can wear. Ta-da! So the piece de resistance of any Wonder Woman tiara is, of course, the bright red star. And you can use this technique with other accessories and other metal pieces that you want a different color. And what I use is stained glass paint. And that gives the tint a color to the metal, but it also retains that metal sheen underneath the paint, which is really, really important. Don't need a ton. It goes on looking pink. I promise it does not end up pink. Put that down, those last few edges. And then we're gonna let it dry. So from here, really, we just have to finish it off by putting the star onto the tiara. You can do this a couple of different ways. You could use adhesive putty. You can also use the double-sided foam adhesives. Just remember that most of these stars are hollow on the inside, so you'll need something with a little bit of depth to it. Just gluing it will not work. So once you put that adhesive putty or the foam adhesive in there, go ahead and very carefully, you want to make sure it's centered. That sucks when it's not centered. That looks bad. You want to keep your fingers off of it as much as possible, because like any kind of paint with dimension, puffy paint or anything else, it can get fingerprints in it. And there we go. Our finished Wonder Woman tiara with our lovely red metallic star, ready to go fight some crime and defend the world. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope it helped. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials that'll be coming up soon. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below or reach out to me on social media. I'm GoldenLassoGirl on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me at GoldenLassoCosplay on Facebook or email me at kimmy@goldenlasso.net. Happy to help. Can't wait to see your cosplays. Be sure and send me pictures, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for coming to my workshop.